This is ICASTnews.com, coming to you live and direct from the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And this is Heat in the Middle East, with a special guest today, Ambassador Emeritus Uri Barner. And I'm your host, Shannon Taylor. Welcome, Ambassador Barner.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Ambassador Barner has a career very extensive and varied, going for decades. He is a veteran diplomat, currently serving also as the senior advisor to the chairman of the America-Israel Friendship League, an international league that operates across the globe. He has served as Israel's ambassador to Turkey from 1998 to 2001, and is the co-chairman of the Medical Development for Israel in the past, funding and raising the level of medical care in Israel, and was the primary benefactor in that capacity for one of the three foremost children's hospitals in the world, which is in the Schneider's Children's Medical Center in Petah Tikva. He holds a Master of Arts degree in Political Science from Emory and a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations and History from Hebrew University and Law from Hebrew University, and he's fluent in Hebrew, English, Arabic, French, Yiddish, and German. He was involved in the Camp David Accords and negotiations. He was a Consul General in Chicago. He was the co-counsel in New York from Israel to the United Nations, and he was the Foreign Affairs Council in Israel. I can't tell you all the positions that he held. I'd be here for half an hour. Ambassador, I want to get right to the main issue today, which is the terrorism circling the globe, and in particular Brussels.
Well, we have warned the world many times that terror will not stop in Israel, and that ISIS and Palestinian and Arab terrorism goal is the whole Western civilization. So as long as it was only in Israel, nobody did anything, nobody paid attention. Now it hits Brussels, Europe, France, and it's a problem. So I hope that now the world will recognize the danger of terrorism. There is only one way to deal with it: to declare war against it and to eliminate it. Because unless you do it, they will continue to attack us. I'm talking America, Israel, Europe, Western civilization, and of course Israel and the Jews are number one. And they declare it. ISIS said it very clearly. Their goal is the destruction of the state of Israel and establishing an Islamic state. So I hope that we are going to learn the lesson now, the terrible lesson, after 35 people were killed in Brussels, after 13, 14 were killed in Ankara, Istanbul a while ago. So we have to learn the lesson and to take a concerted action against them. We are here in the United Nations. For Israel, it means a lot in many ways. Israel, in a way, was born here, that in November 29, 1947, the United Nations made a resolution to establish two states, a Jewish and an Arab. We accepted it. The Arabs didn't, and tried to attack us, and attacked us with a goal not to conquer territory, but to destroy us. And the world have to understand this is their goal until today.
Ambassador, you mentioned the dead, but the 230 critically hurt and wounded in Brussels, and the 130 wounded in Turkey, and 130 dead in Paris, and 16 dead in San Bernardino, and the weekly casualties in Israel through stabbing type of insurrection called Intifada, and then of course you have in the Pacific, in Malaysia, or constant terrorism there. Is the terrorism now going to be a wave of the future? Are we going to see increased amounts of wounded and dead, or are we able to stop it now? Are we able to curtail it now? Is there some means we have to put an end to it?
It all depends on us. and first of all on America. Yes, if America takes all measures to eliminate ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the others, they can do it. America has the power. Now they have to have the will and the political decision to do it. And it's very dangerous if America will not do it, because it will haunt back, including into the United States. Europe is not in a position to do it. There is a very large Muslim community all over Europe. Israel, yes, we are doing it in our area, and we are managing to control a lot of the Intifada, knives and others in Israel. But worldwide, if we want to prevent it from becoming an epidemic, only America have to do it. Nobody else can do it and will do it.
In Brussels, they were searching for the lone escapee, the most wanted person in Europe. We used to have the most wanted list in America, like for Dillinger, Al Capone. So they had their most wanted man, and they got him. As soon as they got him, they got this tragedy. Is it a lesson not to capture the individual terrorist? Or is it a lesson to first capture the whole cell before you capture the terrorist? What is the methodology that was used in Brussels? What went wrong?
It's not a matter of going wrong. They caught the key man, and they should continue to do it. But then you don't stop there. You have a comprehensive action against terrorist cells, and we'll all know who they are. They talk about 400 ISIS people that were spread all over Europe. We all know where these 400 people are. And we have to have a concerted effort. Belgium, France, England, Germany, etc., just to eliminate them. Otherwise, we are all in trouble. I mean, Israel will do it, but we cannot do it in Europe, and we cannot be alone. And we shouldn't. Especially now in Brussels, it was not against Israel. It was against Western civilization. In Turkey, Israelis were killed, but it was against Turkey as well. Even though it's really funny in a way and tragic, because Turkey at the beginning stayed neutral, and only later they dealt with ISIS, because Turkey has its own internal problems with the Kurds and other minorities and terror groups, many of them. So they had no choice but to deal with it. Turkey at the beginning thought it would stay neutral and ISIS will not touch them. They were wrong. So today Turkey is in the forefront of fighting ISIS, and they can do it. Turkey has an excellent army, excellent. And all they need is to deploy their will, armed forces, and deal with it. They can do it, and the rest of Europe and America too has to join. The fact that ISIS hasn't hit the United States is only a matter of time. Unfortunately, if they will let develop, they will hit here too. America is not immune from this. Everybody has to understand it. So I hope that the President of the United States is going to take the baton in his hand and lead the world, Europe, the whole world, against the radical Islams. We shouldn't confuse it with a war against Islam, because Indonesia, Malaysia, many other countries, hundreds of millions are Muslims, and they are against it. Egypt, General Sisi is against it, and is fighting the extreme Islamists in Egypt. Jordan, of course. And even Saudi Arabia, with all the problems, would like now to join Israel, mainly against Iran. Because the source of terror is Iran, we have to remember. They are inspiring it, they are subsidizing it, they are sending their terrorists to train them. We have to deal with Iran. And the only way to deal with Iran is a concerted effort of all the nations together. And the fact that now the sanctions were released from Iran only helps them economically, but they didn't change their mind. They say themselves they are going to continue to encourage and conduct terrorism, and they do. And unless we go to the source, it's not going to stop.
In Brussels, there's now a great question of whether or not its internal security was adequate, and whether or not European security is adequate. Certainly every country in Europe has long respected the Sûreté in France, the MIs in England. I can't imagine Brussels was as neutral as any nation with regard to the Middle East, and yet they seem to have more of these jihadists than any other nation in Europe. The attack on Paris supposedly came from Brussels, and now Brussels is locked down again. Why Brussels, and why the origin of all this in Brussels? A Jewish community no longer exists there as it did. Instead, you have an Islamic community. And why are all the jihadists found in this community? Why did it take 4 months to find this one individual? And yet, like the Hydra, you cut off one head, there are 4 more heads. Why is Brussels such a center for this type of terrorism?
Because Brussels is the center of NATO. Brussels is the center of Western civilization, and Brussels had a very open policy, like Germany, by the way, of allowing so-called refugees to come in. We were warning Israel and even other countries, you have to screen the refugees. It's true, the poor refugees escaping from Syria are in terrible shape, and they deserve to be taken care of. But you have to screen them, because by not screening, ISIS, Al-Qaeda and the others are taking advantage of it and infiltrate Europe, and then you have Brussels. You have to have very, very firm actions. You also have to control the borders. Yes, the European Union, free for everybody to drive, etc. No visas, no passports. It has to change, at least temporarily, not regarding the European Union itself, but regarding the present situation of dealing with terrorism. Otherwise, terror will succeed to destroy, because they said already, Brussels was only one. They plan to do many more, if they'll be allowed. And if they have 400 ISIS people spread all over Europe, we can identify, and it has to be an all-out war with no mercy and so on. And legalism cannot prevail. You cannot say that because of one legal reason or the other legal reason, you cannot defeat terror. Then you adjust the law, you adjust the legal system, so you can defeat the terror. Otherwise, they hide behind the legalism, and look what happened. Brussels, Ankara, and so on. And it's really pathetic that it happened in Turkey, which is a Muslim country. Turkey, in the beginning, stayed neutral in the Syrian conflict. They didn't want to deal with it, nothing. But then they were attacked, and now, of course, Turkey is in the midst of everything, and terrible terrorist acts are happening there, and Turkey is now in the forefront fighting ISIS, and Turkey has a very good army.
And Jordan too.
And Jordan too, and they can do it. And they work with Saudi Arabia. Israel has to be careful. As long as we are not being attacked, we don't want to draw the fire. We acted against them, especially against the jihadists, against these Muslims knifing and killing Israelis. And people said, okay, as long as knifing there, the world was quiet. And we warned the world, it's not going to stop there. So now they go with other systems of explosives, knifing, suicide bombing. 2 brothers Amazing.
It's frequently two brothers, father, son, sister, brother. It's
Yeah.
always, it's like we had in America in the Old West, you know, with the Dillinger gang or whatever it was. It was always the James brothers. There's always some family. Who else are you going to work with but your brother or your father or your sister? Yes?
Correct. We have to develop a concerted anti-terrorist framework. They deploy the army, commandos, money, intelligence all over.
How do we stop their funding?
That's by going to the source. We know where they are. The sources.
Are the laws in place to stop the funding for this terrorism?
And if not exactly, you cannot play legalese. That's what I'm saying. Yes, you can. Because every law has one basic goal: to defend its citizens. And when they are in danger, the law always will allow you to act. And terror is a danger to the citizens. Very simple, very clear. Yes, you can deal. And the law, you cannot let them use the legalese to stop actions. Look, we know it in Israel. We had a very tough time with terrorists. But then we took actions. We detained them, we arrested them, we attacked them, we killed them. And now it's very little. It's still there, okay, knifing here and there. And we defeat them. It's the only way to do it in Europe and with American forces. Because otherwise it will come to the USA, God forbid, as well.
Israel is usually the canary that you have the experiment on and everybody looks away or stays neutral. Neutrality hasn't worked for any other nation. Terrorism finds its way. Is there any form of terrorism that Israel has experienced that has not found its way to the other nations of the world as victims?
No. Everything that was against Israel, explosives, knifing, terror, whatever, found itself afterwards against others. Especially look at the Arab countries, even Saudi Arabia. They suffer a great deal from terror. And they fight it. And the Persian Gulf countries. And it's all inspired by Iran. And today you have a situation of a practical coordination between Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, Egypt, and so on. It was not official, but in reality, that's the way it is. And if we join forces, we'll defeat them.
Ambassador, your extensive lifelong work in foreign affairs and security and culture and international relations, a consul in India and in Chicago and in Denmark and so on, enables you to have a world perspective. And in terms of the security at the airport in Belgium, where they had 2 bombs go off and 1 didn't, and the one who had the bomb that didn't go off was able to simply leave the airport after the explosions. Do you have any inclination that there was inside help that enabled these terrorists to get into the airport with their carts of bombs and enabled this person to leave the airport without his bomb and escape till now?
I can only speculate. Yes, there had to be inside work, which means it's not officials. It means that the terrorists have infiltrated the airport and the area and the people who are controlling it and guarding it. It's enough that you have 1 or 2 to help you to carry this massacre out. Absolutely, I believe it's there. I believe there is an inside work as well. Not that the Belgian authorities are, but some people are ISIS people and they or sympathizers, and they managed to infiltrate. Otherwise, they would never be able to do it.
And so this methodology that they would employ would be used around the globe. It could happen in America with the same type of inside help, and you wouldn't know it until it takes place.
Correct.
You have a background of tragedy and glory where you were born in Israel as a baby, but you lost almost your entire family except for your parents. 300 members of your family, and the entire city was destroyed in the Holocaust. And you spent your life fighting in Israel. You were in the Nachal Infantry Combat Unit, and you were a spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces. Do you believe that there is any possibility that there will come a time when this terrorism will end and there will be negotiations, as you had at Camp David, where the nations will be lifted from the burden of Iran and be able to come to some form of meaningful agreement, whereby this type of warfare will cease?
It depends on us. On us, I mean America, first of all. America is the leader of the democratic world, and it cannot shirk off this responsibility. And it cannot say, like in the 30s, you are an isolationist. By American becoming isolationist, it introduced eventually World War II. We know it. Hitler said it. If he would have stopped in 1935, he would not proceed. Same thing is today. America is the leader of the Western world. He has the power, the money, intelligence, have allies in the area, Israel, Germany, even the UK, some in France. If you have a concentrated area, and you have NATO, the biggest army all over Europe, you have to deploy everything. And right now, before it's not too late. Otherwise, there are going to be more Brussels, and innocent people will be killed for no reason, only because the authorities who are able to do it in the US and in Europe are not willing to take actions. And you cannot have the legalese stop you. And the legalese can easily be adopted, because there is no law that doesn't correspond to self-defense. That's the foundation for everything.
That's the ultimate question. We're dealing now with elections in America and a question of leadership and the role of leadership. And one question is the value of NATO and the money to be spent on NATO. Is it worth the price? And the parties are debating that issue. The other issue is, have we had effective leadership? And on that point, I would ask you about the role of Russia in Syria. And with Russia's announcement that it will soon be leaving Syria, do you actually foresee a peace coming to Syria with Assad leaving, with that whole region ceasing its flow of refugees? And do you see the refugee problem coming to an end?
That's a $64,000 question.
That's why I left it for the end.
Yeah, I know. I think it's doable. Russia learned from experience in Afghanistan. Russia learned from the American experience in Vietnam. They do not want to be sucked into any conflict. Number one. Number two, the most important strategic policy of Russia is working with the United States. If the USA stays away and let them do whatever they want, that's fine, why not? But basically, they want to cooperate with the United States. They also want it economically. Then they want to cooperate with the countries in Europe, Germany. But economy and politically, is right in the center. It's doable, it's possible, but you need to have here the leadership that will agree to it, see it as policy, and shake hands also with the Russians against terror, because Russia understands that Islamic terror eventually will work against them. You have about 60 million Muslims in the former Soviet Union. Many of them are in Russia, others are in the Russian borders of Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, etc. They know that Islamic terror eventually can hit back into Russia heavily. Therefore, they are ready to take measures against it. The fact is, they left Syria. Why did they leave Syria? They still have their forces in Latakia, etc. They do not want to be sucked into a war of terror. Putin is a clever leader, and he doesn't want it. So they'll help. Yes, they want to have influence in Syria. They want to have Assad in Syria. America wants Assad out. Israel wants Assad out too. But eventually, facts speak louder than policies. And if he's there, and he is, you have to deal with him. And what's happening in Syria is a de facto partition of the people of the rebels, Assad, Kurds. The Kurds is a very important element, and the one influenced by Iran. And that's what's going to be in Syria. However, Russia would like to maintain its position in Syria, and the only way they can do it is eventually work out with the United States and have a work out between Assad and the rebels. Otherwise, the rebels can take over. And they understand it, and they don't want it. And they don't want to be sucked into the war with the presence of Russian army. And that's why Putin left. He saw the American experience in Vietnam. He saw the Russian experience in Afghanistan. He doesn't want it again. He's a clever leader.
And let's conclude by your advising our audience about the America-Israel Friendship League, of which you serve for many years with great distinction in a pivotal role, and on which we have sent many missions to Israel.
The America-Israel Friendship League was created in 1971 with one goal: to enhance the relation between Israel and the United States in all walks of life outside of politics. Politically, there is AIPAC, and there are many other American Jewish Committee and other organizations. We have been acting from the very beginning on joint cultural programs, tourism, economics, and so on. And that's why what we are doing now, we are sending to Israel every year 10 to 15 delegations of American influentials from all walks of life: state senators, attorneys general, law review editors, and youngsters, non-Jewish youngsters. We are the only organization in the USA and Israel that exchanges every year 100 teenagers, 10th and 11th graders, many of them non-Jewish, with Israelis, they are Jews of course, because we want to enter the American education system. And by now, we have exchanged over 6,000 youngsters, 10th and 11th graders in 30 years. No other organization did it, and we see the results. We do the follow-up. We are in touch with the graduates. They become, all of them, sympathizers of Israel and the Jewish people. They work together in each community with the Jewish community, with the Council of Foreign Relations, with the World Affairs Council, all those that are not related to Israel, they are in and enhancing the relationship between the two countries. And this is what the America-Israel Friendship League is doing.
Congratulations. And
Thank
thank you,
you.
Ambassador. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
expertise. This is Heat in the Middle East, coming to you live from the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And I am your host, Shannon Taylor.